Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. In this video, I want to share with you 3 important keys for recovery. Now, these are concepts that I think would serve you really well to practice and to get under your belt. I think it's very difficult, maybe not even possible, to recover without them. If this is the first video of mine that you're clicking on, or you are new to understanding this binge eating problem, I would not start with this video. I think there's a lot of other foundational knowledge that you may need first in order for these concepts to really make sense. So the first C is compassion. I know. Some of you might be rolling your eyes and going, really, Sarah? Like, you're going to talk about compassion again? But firstly, I'm going to talk about what it is, and then I'm going to talk about how it can actually change your behavior. Because ultimately, that's what people want. They're thinking, you're probably thinking, I don't want to be more compassionate. I just want to stop binge eating. Now, self-compassion, first of all, what it's not telling yourself that everything's okay when it's not. And it's not telling yourself that things don't matter when they do. So self-compassion is not about deluding yourself. It's not about talking to yourself in a syrupy, sweet, kind and loving voice. Self-compassion can sometimes be, I've binged again and I feel like I've messed up and I'm feeling really disappointed and I'm feeling lost with this and I'm still trying to figure out my way. All those things are much more factual than the critical voice that most people have, that is, I'm a failure, I'm disgusting, I'm this, I'm that. All these horrible, horrible thoughts and things that we get told by that voice in our head. It is important to develop a kinder voice in your head. Doesn't even have to be kind. Let's start with just a little bit kinder than that critical voice is. The reason being is that when you are more compassionate towards yourself, you cool down those emotional jets. So after you binge, quite often there's a catastrophic emotional reaction. And it's that very reaction, those feelings, that cloud your capacity to see things with clarity and perspective, because everything feels terrible. So in that moment, everything really is terrible, because our emotions often tell us what's true. Because we can know something in our rational mind isn't true, but if we don't feel it in our emotional experience, then we'll go with our feelings. Our feelings seem to win out most of the time. And because when we're so harsh on ourselves and we have these big negative emotions around, we cannot see the information that we need. We cannot make clear decisions. When we are trying to understand what's going on for us, if we're just saying the reason why I binge is because I have no self-control, I'm this, I'm that, and that's the reason why I binge, you're never going to find a new reason. And for as long as that is your reason, you will stay stuck. I would say for most people, there is information about yourself, about ourselves, that we just don't know. We have these blind spots, and your blind spots might be full of nuggets of information that would help you figure out this problem. But if you're always going straight to the critical place, you won't be able to see it. It's like your brain protects you because it doesn't want you to keep feeling that shame. It's much easier to say, I'm this and I just have to make myself not be like this anymore. If you stay in the same self-critical place with the same self-critical tapes playing over and over again, you will stay stuck. And it feels scary sometimes to let go of that self-criticism or to challenge it, because sometimes that self-criticism, maybe it does make you do things. Like I've often said, shame just doesn't motivate us, but actually it can. Shame can motivate us to comply with something for a while. We can restrict from a place of shame and from a place of feeling like we're not good enough, but it doesn't last as long-term motivation, and it will never get you to a place where you feel better about yourself. And this links on to my next C and my next key, which is curiosity. So most people, me included, when I was in it, are on this journey, this quest to find the solution to their binge eating problem. And it's probably why you clicked on this video. And it's very easy to fall into that trap of thinking, if I just know everything about it, if I have enough knowledge, if I listen to enough people talking about it, somehow something's just going to slot into place and then I'll be able to recover. And actually what I think is the case, the bit that we keep avoiding, is quite often the answer isn't out there. The answer involves going inward. And it reminds me of that proverb that says, the treasure that you seek is in the cave you fear to enter. I'm guessing you are that cave. And this links with the compassion part, because it's really difficult to be curious and to see new things if we're not being compassionate about what we see, because going inward involves confronting the messy, flawed parts of ourselves that we're trying to fix a lot of the time because we think we're not good enough and we have to be better. So we need to find that compassion for our humanness, for being imperfect. And anything that is really going to create a profound shift in you is not going to be some amazing bit of advice that somebody else gives you. It's going to be the things that you realize for yourself. When we realize something, when we're the ones who notice something that's true for us, that has far more transformative power than when I say something and it resonates, and so it feels true. And in the moment, the amount of times I had a piece of advice and I would think, that's brilliant. If I can just hold on to that and make sure that I apply it all the time, I'll be able to fix this problem. But it never seemed to work. We don't, as human beings, we don't seem to be very good at taking advice, even when we like the advice, even when it sounds like good advice. So that curiosity, that willingness to go and see parts that you don't like, the willingness to see things that you haven't seen before, because quite often when we're looking for an answer in ourselves, we already have an idea of what we hope the answer is going to be. And there might be things we don't want to acknowledge. We don't want to acknowledge that we carry a lot of anger towards someone that perhaps we love as well, because that threatens the connection. One for me was I didn't want to acknowledge how lonely I felt. I had a whole story which was tapped in with shame around what being lonely meant. I think I had this story that being lonely meant that somehow everybody had rejected me, rather than this was just an experience that I was having that wasn't necessarily true. So I didn't want to go near that. I wanted to convince myself I was fine. I'm one of these super independent people. I didn't get lonely. I had to acknowledge and accept those parts of myself that I didn't really like, and challenge the story I had around them so that I could bring them in and accept my experience. And then the compulsive urge to continually escape my experience by using food diminished. The final C I want to talk about is connection. Binge eating is the ultimate disconnecting experience. Quite often we're disconnected from our environment, we're disconnected from our thoughts, we're disconnected from our body's signals. It's something that's done secretly and in private, so we often disconnect from other people as well. So what I see people doing, and I can relate to it to some degree, is this: I want to disconnect from the world, from people out there, and sort myself out, make myself good enough in some way, and then I'll come out and reconnect as this, the whole lockdown thing, when there was all this talk about people were on these health kicks or losing weight or doing these exercise regimes. There was this idea that we were all cocooning and we're going to come out as these butterflies, transformed and somehow better versions of ourselves. And I see this all the time with the binge eating. People will often cancel social events if they've overeaten, or if they don't want to overeat, or they don't feel comfortable in their bodies. They will stop themselves from doing things that they imagine they would do once they had, quote unquote, fixed this problem, whether that's going for a promotion or a career opportunity, or whether it's dating, or whether it's going on holiday, whether it's wearing certain kinds of clothes. All these things that we put off, we disconnect ourselves from. When you struggle with binge eating, it also feels disconnecting because it might feel like no one around you understands. So when we're looking at how to find ways to connect, there are opportunities to connect with people online who know what this problem's like, but it doesn't mean just connecting with people who know about binge eating, but it's this idea of maybe doing something for somebody else. I wasn't sure if I was going to mention this, but it looks like I am. They did a study in the 90s, someone called Heatherton, where they took people who scored really highly on this scale, which was about concern for dieting and weight fluctuations, and if they had high scores there, they were looking at those people. So I would think of this potentially as people in the binge restrict cycle, but they weren't using that language back in the early 90s. So Heatherton gave them the Exner self-focus sentence completion task, I think was the name of the questionnaire that they gave to them. And what it does is it measures somebody's self-focus. And what they found, compared to the general population who are not struggling with this problem, the participants, their scores were similar to psychopaths. Now, I'm not saying by any means that anyone struggling with binge eating is a psychopath. I think often far from it. I think they have huge amounts of empathy. But what it does is a problem like this causes you to become so focused on yourself that everything that happens around you feels like it's about you. And this was what they were looking at. This was the comparison part that they were making. Now, I've already talked about compassion, so don't you dare use this information to beat up on yourself. But what it means is it might take a conscious effort to bring our attention outside of ourselves and actually onto others. And I don't mean this in a people-pleasing way, because the difference between people-pleasing and wanting to actually serve others is people-pleasing is often about, I have to make you happy in order for me to feel okay. It's often a compulsion. It's often I can't put myself first because I don't feel good when I put myself first. I feel like I'm doing something wrong and I feel shame. So therefore I have to do everything for everyone else to protect myself from shame, which is very different to wanting to be of service to people. So whether this is calling someone that you know might be having a hard time, whether it's volunteering in some way, whether it's sweeping your neighbour's porch, whether it's paying for someone's coffee in a coffee shop, whether it's just looking a shop assistant in the eye and saying good morning to them in a way that you really look at them and see them. It's bringing your focus into others, but also into the world. I think animals can do this quite well, and I think that can be quite satisfying as well. Anything that involves you coming out of yourself and making connections. Seeking connection can be quite a vulnerable thing to do, especially with other people, because we don't know how other people are going to behave. So it takes courage to make ourselves vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, that's when we're more likely to connect, as opposed to when we're these closed books and we're stiff and we're formal and we're not really sharing anything of ourselves. When we share something of ourselves and people see it and then you connect, that's what satisfying connections are really about. And when I'm talking about connection, not just connection to other people, connection with yourself and your body and how you speak to your body and how you treat your body. A better relationship with your body often results in feeling more balanced around food, having less intense binges because you're more connected to your experience. It's harder. It's really difficult to binge when you are feeling embodied in your body because we switch that bit off. So finding ways to be more connected. Those are the 3 C's and the 3 keys. It's compassion, curiosity, and connection. I think if you can see, first of all, appreciate the value of these things and then pursue them for yourself, because, and I've talked about this before, but quite often people want to stop binge eating by trying to make themselves stop binge eating, and then they're just focused on the binge eating all the time. When I talk about what you want to create for yourself outside of binge eating, a lot of people don't know. Well, here's 3 things that you can focus on that will move you away because they're not particularly compatible with binge eating. So rather than it be this wrestling with the problem, what can I focus on if I'm not focusing on food? Here's 3 things you can focus on. You're welcome. As always, let me know your thoughts. I think this one might bring up a few questions because some of these concepts are quite difficult to convey in a short YouTube video. So if you want me to do more videos on any of these topics, let me know. Hope it was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.